Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. I'm Kevin McCullough. He's Mike Berry, the Executive Director of Litigation for AFPI, America First Policy Institute. Mike, let me shift back. I took us down a whole detour on the voting integrity issue, but I still think it's the most important thing that we need to be aware of going into the next election. But now we're at the point in time in the transition that the president gets to pick his cabinet. He's picked a lot of kind of non-conventional picks. I love them all, especially given what we've had over the last 4 years with, Merrick Garland barely being able to, explain himself at things. So what's your whole take on kind of the, not really legal hurdles, but maybe some more of the PR hurdles that they're going to have to deal with?
Well, the general theme I think we're seeing from President-elect Trump's cabinet picks is he's choosing fighters and disruptors. And I think that's exactly what the American people elected him to do.
Yep.
Right? Is to fight back against the deep state. And so Matt Gaetz, now former Congressman Gaetz, it fits that mold to a T. Just as you said,
what I love about his picks is that they're not only people that we think of that way. Almost all of them have a record of actually fighting for things, whether it's in Congress or elsewhere. So, I mean, it's like we see the meat on the bones in terms of what he's done there.
Yeah, he's been targeted himself by this very agency, right? And so we still have the presumption of innocence in this country. So just as you pointed out, if law enforcement looked into this and decided not to do anything, then it should be right. That should be a pretty self-explanatory. It speaks for itself right there. And in terms of the confirmation fight, I've seen a lot of chatter about, oh, well, these guys will never get confirmed. I think a lot of people are and understandably so, unaware of this thing called a recess appointment. And so under a 10-year-old Supreme Court case, if Congress is in recess for a period of 10 days or longer, right, then whether it's in between two sessions of Congress or even within the same session of Congress, that meets the definition of a recess. And during that period of recess, for however long it lasts, whether it's 10 days, 100 days, 6 months, the president has the right under the Constitution to make recess appointments without the consent of the Senate.
So talk about the calendar. How does it work? Is the president in office prior to the Senate coming back into session?
It obviously the president would need to be in office at the time, right? So it can't happen right now when he's president-elect, but after January 20th. So from January 21st onwards, if and when the Senate is in recess, then President Trump at that time would be authorized under the Constitution to appoint anyone to a vacancy within the federal government.
So do we have to wait until March or April to get an attorney general?
No, it could be immediate. It would be literally the moment he says, I am now appointing Matt Gaetz to be the attorney general.
Is the Senate not in session when the president is sworn in?
They don't have to be. They do not have to be. He could be sworn in, and then within the next 24 hours they could recess at that moment. Now, here's the thing.
Oh, and because his party controls the Senate, they could do that. See, I know that the House gets sworn in. What is it? It's on the 6th or whatever. Like it's earlier, yes. And then he's sworn in around the 20th.
Yes.
But they're not. So that I think this is what most people are confused about, including me. I don't understand when they're in session or why they would suddenly take a recess, like just after beginning their session, if they're trying to do their job that the American people elected them for. Well,
here's the kicker. There's a separate clause in the Constitution. So there's the recess appointments clause that we just discussed, right? Which is when the Senate, when the Congress is not in session, or when the Senate specifically is not in session, then the president can make these recess appointments. And then people say, well, how do you get the Senate to not be in session? There's another clause called the adjournment clause. And the adjournment clause says that it requires concurrence from both chambers, right, in order for there to be a congressional recess. In other words, the House and the Senate both have to agree, okay, we're going to adjourn and we're going to be in recess. But the adjournment clause says if there is a disagreement, if there's a conflict between the House and the Senate as to whether or not to adjourn, the president can unilaterally adjourn them himself.
There you go.
So it's sort of, no pun intended, but it's a trump card, right?
Quite literally.
Now, here's the thing, Kevin. It's actually never been tested. in the history of our country to make cabinet appointments. So it would be in the law, we call it a matter of first impression, right? And so people would say, well, it would have to be challenged in court. Not necessarily, because it's never been challenged before. So there's no precedent legally for whether or not a president can do it. But the adjournment clause clearly says if there's a conflict, the president may, until such time that he sees fit, adjourn the Congress.
Wow.
So he can.
We're out of time, but Mike Berry, you have helped us understand a huge piece of this puzzle, and I appreciate all the work that you're not only helping us with tonight, but also all that you're doing for AFPI. And please come back. We're going to need to talk to you a lot. Sure.
Stick around for more of That Kevin next. That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.